Now, this video is a bit unconventional, but instead of bombarding you with 15 different quotes from 15 different philosophers, I'll just focus on one thing that one of my biggest inspirations in life in terms of his mentality to life, what the legend that is Roger Federer once said. And I want to make it clear here, you don't need to be a tennis fan or even a sports fan to just appreciate how in this one statement, he described his incredible mentality in tennis and in life. Honestly, I think it's one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I've ever heard. Hey guys, if you're new here, I'm Bartol. I studied engineering at Oxford University for 4 years, and in that time, I made a lot of friends there and met some truly inspirational people. Although everyone I met was so different, from different countries, studying different subjects, of different ages, they all seem to share these 3 traits, and in this video I'll go over exactly what they are and how I apply them to make my journey through my studies and through life successful and enjoyable. The overall takeaway, if you don't want to watch the entire video, is just don't beat yourself up. There are so many paths through life, and none of them are the right one. So celebrate the victories, forget about the failures, and enjoy the journey. Let's get straight to it. So the first common trait that I always found when meeting new people at Oxford was an innate ability to fail. Sounds a bit weird, but it's true. Students at Oxford have an innate ability to fail and get up and keep going. Now at Oxford, it is drilled into us just by the way exams are created and examined. For engineering at least, at Oxford the pass mark for our papers was 30%. That means that to pass Oxford for engineering, you're allowed to get 7 questions wrong out of every 10. That is failing more than double the amount of times you succeed. And this is how Oxford taught us that there was nothing wrong in failure and nothing wrong with being wrong. And for most Oxford students, this is a big thing to get over. I know it was for me. I really enjoyed school the last couple of years, studying hard and getting really good grades. It was challenging but rewarding, and I thought the university was going to be exactly the same. Well, I couldn't be more wrong. At university, I remember getting my first math test back, and I was shocked by how low the score was. Just completely embarrassed. Thought I would be kicked out. That's how low they were. But I wasn't. It was exactly what our professors expected. We then went over the questions, and in the next test, grades improved, and I slowly realized, hold on, I'm finally learning new things, and I'm learning quicker than ever. Think about it. By getting a question right, you're just validating that you know how to solve that type of question. So you're not really learning much. But by getting a question wrong, you figure out exactly what you need to learn, and you focus on that, and then get it right the next time. That is exactly what learning is. So tip number 1 is be okay with failure. It sucks in the moment and stings, and you may feel embarrassed, but embrace it and look for it in life, as it is the best way to learn. Let's see what Roger Federer has to say about this. So in his famous speech, he said that if you look at his career as a whole, he won more than 80% of his matches. Crazy. But he then said, now if you look at an average game that he played, what percentage of points do you think he won? It was 54%. This means that the best tennis player in human history lost every second point. Even more crazy statistic. And that is why you probably see tennis players screaming and stressing on the courts. It's because it's such a mental game. You know what's even more of a mental game? Studying. And what I took from this is if the best tennis player in the world is able to lose every second point and still turn out as an incredible success, maybe I can too. So let go of the fear of failure, keep failing, and keep getting up and trying again. One thing I forgot to ask is, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a like and consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it, and it helps me continue making these educational and hopefully fun videos. Okay, tip number 2. So the second most common trait that I found in the people I met at Oxford was that they were able to focus and point their energy to what mattered most in a given moment. Now this is a bit of an abstract one, but what I mean by this is that what I saw in Oxford students was an ability of, when they were succeeding, to live in this success and use this positive energy to drive them even further into new successes. But when they were failing, to just step over the negative energy surrounding that. And in the best cases, not even seeing failures as obstacles or as negative things. Now, I know this is pretty ideal, not seeing failures as negative things. We all know that sometimes it can be hard not to be upset by struggles, but at least being conscious of it, living in them for a bit, and then moving on, that's good enough. And the best part about this point is that it can be practiced. Obviously, celebrating successes comes quite naturally to most of us, so practicing the other side of that coin is what's important. So how do you practice getting over failure or the fear of failure? The way I first practiced this was in school, by just randomly putting my hand up in class to answer any questions that were asked. Whatever the questions were, I tried answering. When I first started this, I would feel my heart racing. But trust me, by the time I was at university and doing this, it was second nature. What I realized was that no one would laugh at me. No one will think I'm stupid. We all walk around in life thinking that there is a spotlight trained on us. But believe me, no one is counting your successes or analyzing your successes, and especially not your failures. Doing this one thing in school, opening myself up to failure and getting over it if I was wrong, just flexed that muscle of being uncomfortable and fearing being wrong, and maybe more accustomed to getting over that fear of being wrong and using everything as an opportunity to try and then learn from it. So definitely give this a go. Now, I don't want to sound like one of those guys that promotes discomfort or glamorizes suffering. You shouldn't pull all-nighters, or you shouldn't be waking up at 5 a.m. as a student either, but there is something to say about doing things that are a bit out of your comfort zone because they're good for you. As always, Roger Federer's way of thinking about this whole topic is just so valuable. He said, in tennis, a point is just a point, but when you're playing the point, it has to be the most important thing in the world. But when it's behind you, it's behind you. And this frees up your mind to focus on the next point and the next point after that. That's so good. So remember, when you're playing your next point in life, if you're in it, make it the most important thing in the world. And if you win it, celebrate it. But if you get beaten in that point and it's behind you, well, it's behind you. Learn to focus your attention and energy on what matters most in that specific moment. And this brings me on to my third and final point. The third and final trait that I've seen in most of the Oxford students that I meet is that they don't search for perfection. They submit an essay when it's 80% finished. They stop halfway through an exam question to focus on the next one if time's running out. And they spend time with friends and are relaxed instead of mulling over and perfecting their work. What I want to emphasize with this is obviously work hard, put in energy to sharpen your axe, but don't see the forest from the trees. I hope I'm using that metaphor right. But don't, when you're stuck on a piece of work, forget that it is part of a much bigger project, which is your education. Don't, when you're stuck on a question in an exam or practice paper, forget that it is part of a bigger exam. In other words, don't jeopardize other opportunities for success by fixating on a single part of it. I see so many people do this, searching for the perfect piece of work, but in the grand scheme of things, it matters, but not that much. The important part is showing up and doing the work every day, and fixating on some work can jeopardize all that other work to be done. Some days the work will be good, some days it will be bad. Once a year you will have a perfect day, but don't aim for it, as you won't find it. The example of this that comes to mind is from all my humanities friends at Oxford, those who study subjects like history, English, or philosophy. We would talk over lunch, and one day we were talking about their essays. They were saying how they get 70% or 72% in their essays, and how someone once got an 80%. And I asked, well, what about 90 or even 100%? They just laughed, but they did notice I was still slightly confused. They said, no one ever gets 90 or even 100%. Not even the professors would. Well, so why does it even exist? Well, the confusing thing is, perfection doesn't exist. That's such a freeing thought. Perfection doesn't exist, even though we all think it does. Federer in his speech didn't even focus that much time on perfection. The only thing he did mention was that perfection is impossible. That's it. I mean, there's not much more to be said than that. You shouldn't look for it, you shouldn't aim for it, because you won't find it. It's just not there. And this frees you to do your best work without being choked or suffocated by the fear of perfection. So guys, thank you so much for listening to my thoughts about this, or should I say Roger Federer's thoughts on mentality and the 3 most common traits that I found by meeting Oxford students while I studied there. If you enjoyed this video, I think you might like this one where I talk about the 4 most effective ways I developed during my time at Oxford that saved me and my friends about 20 hours a week and freed up time to enjoy life outside of studies. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.